We got you on, obviously, to update what's being said and what's going on with the Tigers. And AJ Hinch sat down with a bunch of you guys today. What was the tenor of the discussion?
Yeah, so we just finished breakfast with AJ. I think that's worthy of a siren on the afternoon show, but it's mostly an off the record session. But we had some laughs reminiscing about the days of Jacoby Jones and Harold Castro and Ronnie Rodriguez, and it was sort of jarring to consider how far they've come from those days. And I know they still have a long way to go, but I think the reason the Tigers feel confident about where they stand is that the young players that they're attaching their hopes to now are so much more worthy of those hopes than the players they used to pin their hopes to, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago. They do feel like they have a talented young player at every position that's either in the big leagues or arriving in the big leagues soon. But they also know that they still need to make at least one meaningful upgrade to this lineup this winter. And while it hasn't happened yet, I do feel pretty confident that it will happen at least before spring training begins in March.
Do you get a sense at all of whether AJ or Scott Harris understand a growing frustration from the fans because it doesn't feel like they want to step into, even average salaries for Major League Baseball? It's coming across to the fans as them doing this on the cheap. Do they have a sense for that?
Yeah, I think Scott Harris definitely does, because every time he's asked any question that relates to the payroll, he sort of chuckles and says, the payroll question again. And I wonder if AJ even feels some of it himself. I don't want to talk for him, but he did come from an organization in Houston that was spending like one of the highest payroll teams in baseball over the final 3-4 years of his tenure, and that led to obviously tons of success for the Astros. And the Tigers aren't really even acting like a middle market team yet. It's discouraging, I think, for fans when they see the Tigers linked to a player like Alex Bregman, but only with the caveat that he might be too pricey for their budget. This is a team that right now only has about $80 million committed in payroll for next season, including all of their arbitration-eligible players who will be re-signed. And there is space to make a move. I think that they could make a move on the trade market, maybe even more likely than the free agent market. I asked Scott Harris last night, are there moves that you guys feel you are more open to now that would cost you prospects than you were, say, a year ago or 2 years ago when he first got here? And he said, undoubtedly. He added that, the nature and the tenor of those conversations with other teams are wildly different, he said, than they were his first winter here. He said we're much more open-minded now to adding players than we were when I first got here. So I think that's where they may look to upgrade the lineup. And just to toss a name out there, someone that might make sense is Yandy Diaz with the Rays, who's a veteran player who's under contract at a pretty minimal cost through next season, has a 850 or so OPS over the past 2 years, and would obviously fill their need for a right-handed hitter and a veteran in the infield. And he would cost prospects, but Tigers have prospects to spare now. And so I thought that comment was telling from Harris. Like he was adamant and confident that the Tigers are having meaningful trade conversations, maybe behind the scenes, that haven't come to light yet. So we'll see if that does lead to a major move in the next weeks or months.
I made a prediction that the bigger splash will come from the trade market than any free agent signings, and we'll wait to see if that indeed is the case. But the weirdest thing about this is if you can draft, develop, and put a competitive team on the field, that is a better way to do it than anything. To not overextend yourself financially, to maintain some financial flexibility at things like trade deadlines. That's the best way to do it, but it also seems like a long shot. And the crazy thing is, it feels like Scott Harris is putting more faith in the previous guy's prospects than his own prospects. Like he's showing faith in what Al Avila did more so than, because those are the guys that are basically here and ready to go. It's a strange dynamic.
Yeah, it is. I question how much private faith they have in Spencer Torkelson. I know publicly that they say they're committed to him, but I think they're working behind the scenes to come up with a more sure thing at first base, both next season and moving forward. And maybe they're just waiting for for one of Harris's prospects in Jose Burchie to arrive, and maybe that's 3 years, and in the meantime they find a veteran to plug that gap. I know they've been connected to Paul Goldschmidt. I don't know how realistic that option is. He does sound open to a 1-year deal. There's been a lot of buzz around his name this week here in Dallas, as well as another longtime Cardinal who would fit the Tigers' infield framework in Nolan Arenado. And again, those Arenado would have to be traded for, but the Tigers have the assets to go do that. The other name, Doug, that yesterday generated tons of buzz, maybe more buzz than any other, is Japanese phenom Roki Sasaki, who's a 23-year-old right-handed pitcher who is available to any team in baseball because as an international amateur free agent, he is subject to those international signing bonus limitations, and the Tigers have as good a chance as anyone to sign him. And you don't often really ever hear Harris or this regime talk openly about players who aren't on their roster, but Harris had no issue doing that last night. And I thought it was interesting. He said, we have begun to brand ourselves as a destination for starting pitchers. And I'll just say that Roki Sasaki's agent spoke yesterday about how closely Sasaki has been watching MLB teams as he prepares to make the jump and taking note of certain things like pitching development, and also noting that he may not want to be in a big market like Los Angeles or New York. He might be more comfortable, given some of the media scrutiny he dealt with in Japan, in a small market or a mid-market. And certainly the Tigers have acted more and more like a small to mid-market team recently. And so that could be another possible splash move on the horizon for this team. They really do feel like with the successes they've had with guys like Flaherty and Michael Lorenzen, and obviously that cobbled together bullpen/rotation that pushed them to the playoffs last year, they have announced to the league and to pitchers who are available to the league that you can come here and really thrive as a pitcher with Chris Fetter and Juan Nieves and Robin Lund. So, it's not often that this team has had a real chance to land an international star from Japan. I think in this case, they really do.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say, Burchie Kid joining us from the winter meetings in Dallas. You really think that's possible? Like, I mean, this is not a pipe dream. This is potentially on the radar, huh?
Yeah, I think reading the tea leaves of again, the way that Harris spoke last night and all that they have done in the past couple of years to mark themselves as a pitching department that has made advances and can apply technologies and strategies that maybe other organizations can't, that they would appeal to Sasaki, who sounds like he really is a cerebral player who wants to end up with an organization that can allow him to make the most seamless transition possible from Japan to the majors. Look, he's obviously one of the most talented young pitchers in baseball, but that's still not an easy jump to go from Japan to the majors at 23 years old. And so if the Tigers are a team that can help him make that jump rather harmlessly, I think he would give them serious consideration. And I think the Tigers know that and are prepared to make that pitch to Sasaki when they meet with him at some point in the next 45 days.
Interesting. You sounded skeptical that the Paul Goldschmidt thing is really going to happen.
Yeah, I am skeptical. I'm mostly skeptical because his numbers have declined in a pretty significant way over the past 2 years. And while he would certainly be an upgrade at first defensively, which does matter, I'm not sure if his current trajectory continues that he represents a huge upgrade over even someone like Torkelson next season. And I know that's crazy to say, but if you look at Torkelson's numbers when he came back from AAA last year compared to Goldschmidt's numbers, really over the course of the season, they're not all that dissimilar. I mean, this is a guy who's down to a near 700 OPS, and I know he's just 2 years removed from an MVP season, but he's trending the wrong way at a pretty precipitous degree. So maybe he's a stop plug there, but I think someone younger, again, like Diaz or Christian Walker makes some more sense. I think the Tigers also have a bit of a dilemma on their hands, and I asked Harris about this also. Like when they're talking to a player like Christian Walker, who is a established right-handed hitting first baseman, what are they telling him about their plans for Torkelson? Because publicly they have committed faith to Torkelson, but if they can't go out and sit down with a player like Walker and expect him to be okay splitting time with an unproven 25-year-old at first base. So I wonder if they're sending different signals behind the scenes, because otherwise they wouldn't seem like a likely destination for a player like Walker. But I think, again, that a trade feels more likely than a major free agent signing.
All right, well, final thing. What are they getting in Alex Cobb, and will they rue the day that they designated Akil Baddoo for assignment?
Yeah, we were just talking about that with AJ, and there's a chance, and probably a good chance, because of Akil's salary, that he ends up staying with the organization. I don't know if any team is going to want to bring him on at his current cost, so he might be a Tiger nevertheless. And Alex Cobb, they're getting a 37-year-old veteran who, when he's been healthy the past 2-3 years, has quietly pitched really well. And Harris was the GM with the Giants when they signed Cobb to a 2-year deal back in 2022, and felt like they could unlock some things for him there. And he proceeded to have the 2 best seasons of his career. They like a lot of things about him. He induces soft contact. He attacks the zone. They talk about that often. Obviously, he has the 3rd highest ground ball rate since he entered the majors in 2011, second only to Dallas Keuchel and Marcus Stroman. So they think that he'll be a good veteran presence, and that if he stays healthy, they can take his game back to that 2022, 2023 version, possibly better. When Harris sat down with him for the first time this winter, he said, look, we have some pitching ideas for you that we think can take your game to an even higher level. So they obviously have proven able to do that in the past. But again, to me, and I think to you and others, like, this Tigers offseason is going to be defined by whether or not they make a meaningful upgrade to the offense. And it hasn't happened yet. I don't think it'll happen down here. The Tigers actually take off today like most teams, but I do think there are significant trade talks going on behind the scenes, and at some point we'll see something come to light.
Well, later today, if they trade for Yandy Diaz or sign Roki Sasaki, we'll check in with you again, okay?
Yes, sounds good. I'll check in with those guys myself.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Burchie.
Oh, you got it, Doug.
There's the Burchie kid from down there in Dallas at the MLB winter meetings. All right, look, I don't think many Tiger fans are on board with their approach, and I don't blame you. I'm not really either. Could it still work out? It could still work out. It's just they're going to do it their own way, and nobody ever wants to hear that their owner at least is giving the presentation of being cheap. I mean, it just doesn't – what fan base is like, okay, cool. Unless you are absolutely killing it in the prospect pipeline. And it's great what they've done with the young players. And it's great what they did at the end of last year. But is there a degree of sustainability there? That's what everybody's worried about.